Okay, so several weeks back, we had one of our larger clients get hit with a pretty nasty compromise. They stole a bunch of data, and we kind of all tracked it back to a couple different factors. One of them being somebody had a password file stored on their computer, and that the adversary was able to get in using credentials they found in there. So, in response, a couple weeks ago, our point of contact out there reached out to me and he wanted a way to uh, scan his network, all the computers on there, to see who still has these files. And if you're using Rewst, then we know that that kind of has something that works, but really it only works when they interact with that file. So it's not really reliable data. So he wanted that, and that started me down a rabbit hole of how to do this. Obviously, PowerShell script needed to be ran on every machine, but then what do I do with that data once I get it? So I have Rewst listening on a webhook for the PowerShell script to send data to it. Here, I guess I can show the PowerShell script here. It's a pretty basic PowerShell script. It lists the extensions that we want to scan for. Obviously we don't want one password.dll. We don't care about that kind of stuff. We're more concerned with text docs, Excel spreadsheets, CSVs, JSON, Python scripts, HTML, that kind of stuff. And then it just goes out to that machine. It queries how many drives there currently are, and on all the drives, it runs just a get child item command that searches for anything with the word password in the title. One thing we did want to notate was on the C drive, we're sure there's going to be a lot of extraneous data and resource usage if we scanned the whole thing. So we did limit the C drive to only scanning C users. And then it packages it up in this neat little JSON payload, kind of doing nested custom objects in here so that we would see our data site name, the computer name, the computer GUID, and then this files detail, which is another little PS object that includes the file, the creation date, and the last access date. And then it just sends that off to Rewst. Once it gets to Rewst, this is kind of an all-encompassing workflow. It detects that it includes a JSON body in it, and then it sends it off to our SQL database using some nifty SQL here. So we only have the one database, and eventually it will house the files for every computer that we run this on. It does replace, so we're not getting extraneous data. If somebody did delete something and then we ran it again, we shouldn't see it anymore. Once I had that, the problem was then how do I get this info in the hands of the end user? And I have played around with creating CSVs in some of my other workflows. So essentially what I do is just pull the data based on the organization for the person that is receiving it. So it looks at their domain. Their domain matches one of our data sites, and then it pulls only that data site's information. So if I'm sending it to one partner, they're only getting theirs. They're not getting anybody else's. And it packages it up and it sends it out in a nice little email, which I have configured for some not so nifty HTML. Just basically includes the link, click this, and it downloads it and tells them to reach out to us if they have any information or any questions. At that point, though, I kind of was like, well, a lot of our end users don't really manage CSVs well. It's a lot of raw data. It's nested JSON objects at this point. It's a little bit cluttered unless you know exactly what you're looking for. So how can I better present this data to them? And that's kind of where App Platform came to mind. And it's new enough that we're still learning it. We're going through some internal processes to see how we want to present this to the end user. And it allowed me the opportunity to learn some new things about it, as well as start getting it out into the hands of some of our partners. So that's where this third body, or this third path, goes. So essentially what it does is it pulls on on page load, it pulls the last data coming from the app data. Initially, it was kind of tough for me to wrap my head around how do I get the correct information. And so initially what I had done is I assigned a manual variable in the page, and eventually I would just create the page for each one of our partners. Then I was doing some testing and discovered that that is incredibly susceptible to SQL injection attacks. So just getting into the dev screen, you can change the variable to whatever site you wanted and pull up whoever's information you wanted. So that presented another interesting challenge that I conquered by relying on the end user logging in and relying on Rewst's authentication to trust that that user is who they say they are. So then I can know that that domain for that user is accurate. And then I can pull the information based on the user running the script or the workflow. So using a CTX organization name allows me to see who's running it, and then, allows me to see who's running it under what organization, and then that just throws it in there with on the RMM site. And don't mind the RRM field name. That's a typo that at this point is going to be fun to fix. So far it works really great if you are on the Entech domain. The issue we're having now appears to be an integrations issue with SQL that I keep getting this error whenever I try and run it as org. It's saying that it can't find it, but there's a whole ticket in for that. And then it provides the correct data. So what I wanted to do is kind of run this. I created a file for myself on my computer. So ideally I can run this and then we can see it appear in the app. So hit start debug. The biggest problem I see with it right now is relying on data to run the job. I don't see really a way around that. I could set it up in Rewst to run through our Screen Connect or something like that. But I think at this point, just doing like a monthly or a quarterly job is probably the most efficient way. So there we see our Rewst webhook being created, which means if we go to our executions, you can see it updated the file info with what it had found. It follows that correct path. And then if we come over here and we do reload and let it pull that, it should be on here. So let's search for, now I got to remember what I called that file. Let's search for of my passwords. And boom, there it is. We can expand this out. See that I very unsecurely created a don't look here, seriously don't, innocent folder, not keeping anything sus. And well, let's drop this down. And all of my passwords. You can see I created this, right at 2 o'clock. So there it is.